Hello, friends. How are you today? I'm here to talk to you about Schumann resonance and the energies here. It's been a momentous time, really. And the number of energy events, sky events, light wave events, have been absolutely incredible. And it's my view, especially with the recent eclipse, the X flares, the Schumann Waves of Light, the white on the chart, it's my view that these are bringing us and will be bringing us what I'm calling light revelations. The waves, the eclipses, the X flares, there have been two since the weekend. The moon, the new moon on this past Saturday. It comes together to bring us divine light healing opportunities. And I want to show you what I mean. And so I'm going to tell a story, and we're only going to look at one of the black charts today because I really want to talk about the energies. To do that, I want to go back to this chart here. So this was, the new moon was April 30th and May 1st. So it was right at the new moon, right before the new moon. And as soon as I saw this wave here, I thought, you know what occurred to me? What occurred to me was the crown of thorns, the crown of thorns that Jesus wore. And then I saw this, and it, when I looked at it, it looked like a tooth. And I was talking with my friend Alex, and she was reminding me that we've seen waves like this that I'd called the elephant waves in the past, because this kind of has an elephant shape, like the trunk would be here, and the head, the back, and the body, the bottom. And then this is just looks screechy, doesn't it? So all of these waves, and it has this little interesting dot in the middle. All of these waves of light were the first real waves of light that we've seen since, about early March. There was a couple of the very jagged, pointy waves that I talked about. These ones are much different than that. Those jagged, pointy waves were, in my view, attempting to, reach down into us. Right, the energy was, and just like these vertical bars of light that we've been having nonstop for like several weeks, I feel like there's been poking us into us, encouraging us to touch what's deep within. The energies touch us from within. So it's the divine within us that does this, in my view. Okay. And I see that working through like the insane level of, solar flares that we've had. We've had over 50 just since January. We've had over 50 just since January. And then we had, I think it was something like 40-ish, 30 or 40 in just the 3 months of the end of 2021. So I think we've had like 80, 90 something solar flares in the last 6 months. So that's a lot. That's a lot. And I mean, when I say those flares are all M class or X class level flares. So now we've had all this poking into us, and it can feel almost, when this happens, it can feel almost like we're coming apart. And so this is the next set of images that has been revealed on the Schumann. And I want to show you this interesting thing I did, because what I did was I mirrored both of these two waves, and I want to show you what I saw. Okay, so here is what I called the crown of thorns. And when I looked at this up close, can you see the faces in here? I'm going to make the middle part even bigger. What I saw when I looked at this, and I'm just going to invoke a space of sacred discharge and imbue it with the violet flame, which transmutes anything that's not in alignment with the highest good to a state of neutral, a state of unconditional love. Because what I saw when I looked at this image, and I ran it by a couple of people, was pretty much every element of the dark forces, of the forces of darkness. The various that represent various storylines of negative action upon humanity. And everything from the red devil, see, I see the red face here on either side. Here's some kind of a strange green face. I don't know if it's an alien face or a dragon face. There's just faces everywhere here. And it was interesting because in all of these here's scary faces here. Let me just move down here for a sec. Here, there's some interesting faces, and it continues. Look at this stuff down here. Look at that. Yeah, that's, it's kind of like, a little bit like, now it's stopped here. Okay, yeah, because that's where the doubling ends. It's kind of like a little nightmarish. Look, there's even a Pac-Man there. And, but what's interesting, now I don't know if you can see it because I have it big. I can see it more when it's about this big. But what I saw in this part of the chart was a seal on either side, like a seal, like the animal that swims in the ocean. And then the face of like a little child. So on this side of this line pokes out the seal, and on this side is the face of the child. I don't know if you guys can see that. And it's interesting because the seal can represent Sedna. Sedna is, in astrology, she's the daughter that was abandoned by her father, that was tossed overboard to save his skin. And going back to the end of last year, and the story of Sedna has received a lot of attention, in my view, on the astrology wheel at this point in time. And the trauma of children and the trauma of the children of Earth, of humanity, I think is really highlighted here in this wave. And it's really interesting because when I got the hit that this represented Jesus' crown of thorns, and then I saw that it was full of these negative images, and I thought, wow, this is the weight of burden that he was bearing in that story. Imagine if you were him, knowing fully of all these terrible things on earth. And there wasn't the internet back then. There wasn't the awakening of consciousness. He was just, imagine, he just being present, being a highly conscious being present around all of these people who are so asleep. And I just thought that was pretty amazing, fascinating energy. Now, so to me, this wave spoke of the revelations that are going to come and be coming. There was even a white rabbit that I see in here on the left and on the right, doubled above the seal and the child. Now, here's the story of Sedna. It's interesting because Sedna sinks to the ocean, but what happens is she transforms. And she transforms into a goddess, the goddess of the ocean, the goddess of the sea. She represents the ocean, the feminine representation. And sailors prayed to her for fortune, for, to be able to get food from the ocean. They invoked her name. And I learned this. I learned all of these details from my friend Andrea, who's taught me astrology now for some time and is well versed in this area. So I thank her for that. So I thought that was pretty amazing, okay? And then we come over to here, and we have this, I doubled this wave here. I don't know what you guys will see in this. Maybe it looks a little like a broken heart. But I thought it was interesting because to me what's happened now is all of these solar flares, and especially these X-class flares, they've broken us open, and our society and our culture. And we're seeing, there's all these, it's a time of revelation and truth-telling, and that's clearly what's going on here in the current time. And it is heartbreaking to learn of the terrible things that have gone on. But it's also heartbreaking because all of us are deeply affected by this. And we certainly have all been connected in deep effect through the 2 years of, lockdowns and medical problems and excess deaths. This has affected, I don't know how, I think it's affected every single one of us very deeply. And, when things break, when our hearts are broken, we have the opportunity to still stay connected with the divinity within, to let hope rise up and spring again, and to reform what is in more perfect alignment with divine expression and the truth of who we are. Now, what was really fascinating, looking at these two images before the full moon. Before we do that, I want to show you this. I want to show you this other one. And it wasn't the full moon, it was the new moon. Is it here? No. It's here. So the other image was this. And this wave reminded me of something that I talked about in my last human energy class. I think it was of Human Energy 1 that I taught in February and March. And by the way, we're starting Human Energy 2 next week, and some of you have emailed me and said you would like to be in Human Energy 1, which I'm going to hold again in May, and I'm going to get back to everybody sometime after making this video in the next couple days. But if you're interested, please let me know, because we're going to have a limited number for the class, and I will be contacting and reaching out about that. But what I said in class was this, okay? I said, if you could only see, someone asked about, we did sort of a special session during the end of the last class where I talked about very woo-woo topics, and someone asked about the archons and what are the archons, and we talked a little bit about that. But one of the things that I said was, if you could see how small these creatures truly are, you wouldn't be afraid. You would not be afraid if you could see what is trying to scare you and what is trying to affect you. And this image of this wave reminded me of that statement so much, because you have this huge white wave of energy and there's just this little tiny dot that it's addressing. I just found it amusing. Now, what is fascinating about this is that at the new moon, there was an X-class flare that day, just about 4 hours, I think it was, or 5 hours before, maybe it was more than that, maybe it was 8 hours before the new moon. And the X-class flare, looked at the astrology chart for it, and the X-class flare at the new moon was, the moon Sabian symbol was the woman of Samaria. Now, what's amazing is I had seen Jesus' crown of thorns in the Schumann resonance. And then, this energy of the story of the woman at Samaria and Jesus flavors the new moon. So this month that we're in right now, we're a few days into it. It's the second month of the natural new year. And the first month, and prior to the first month, we had this wave of offering of energy. And And then all of this energy really being offered to us to where it was really like, oh my God, it's intense. And now in the second month, these are the themes going in. Now we've been charged up, right? It almost feels like poked and prodded. Our hearts are broken open. And the thing about the woman at the well in Samaria, Jesus approaches her and asks her for water, and it's just her and him at the well. And Samaritans were looked down on, apparently, according to the Bible story. But Jesus treated her with respect. And also she was a woman alone, I guess, at the well. So there was something to do about that as well. But it was really amazing because she was essentially self-possessed. You get a sense that she was a good woman, her own woman. Now, maybe not a good woman by the standards of the day, because Jesus says she was married about 5 times. And yet he says she was not married. And she said she was not married. So she understood her own, the truth, right? The true truth of herself and her life, her situation. So there's when one accepts the shadow elements of oneself, right, and integrates that, we become a whole person energetically. We become really much more stable and grounded, because when we're only consciously operating out of one part of our energy field, the light part, without integrating the shadow, there's an unbalance that's there. But anyway, so she was what I would call meek. She was, for a woman, she was self-possessed. She was in the story drawing the water for him from the well. And the water, the name of the ocean is Mare, right? And is it Latin? I think. Mary. So there's a connection between the divine feminine and the ocean. Water can be seen as an expression of the divine feminine. And so the woman who embodies the divine feminine gives Jesus the water. And this is the one person with whom he can finally admit who he truly is. And he admits to her that he is the Messiah. He's the one that they have been talking about and waiting for. And, okay, so the energy of this point in the zodiac, this degree, this energy, is what has flavored the new moon, okay? And it's interesting because the chart for that, and I'm just going to see here if I have it here. Oh, there it is. Here's the chart for the X-class flare, which looks a lot like the chart for the new moon, although the moon was at 10 degrees. So, but what you see here, okay, is that there are 2 points in the chart. Now, the vertex point is for location, is related to location, but this is the case for most of the United States, okay? Now, you have to be pretty far from the United States for the chart to change meaningfully. But in general, if you're in the United States, wherever you were, this is about the geometry of the chart. And you notice there's 2 points. It's like there's a cup here. And then 2 points pouring forth. Hygeia, health and wellness. And vertex, destiny. Okay? And so, and there's a yod pointing to destiny in this chart from Mars and the sun. Okay? So the yod meaning the finger of God, where God points to in the chart. And so when we look at the energies of, this month, okay, the energies that we are in today, this week, that are coming to fruition over the next couple weeks of, as the new moon energies evolve, we are looking at, how do you move forward with your destiny? To fulfill your personal destiny as God wills through you, right? The finger of God on destiny. And I'm talking specifically related to the people in the United States here, because that's a chart for us, essentially. And then how do we unfold our health and well-being? And then you have the flavor of that X-class flare in the moon, that it's like Jesus had to acknowledge his truth, and then before stepping forth and really, doing his mission, right? Completing the mission, fulfilling the mission. And it's good to have someone who can see us, isn't it? It's good to have that. And it's an honor to be blessed by the divine feminine and to have the blessing of life, the blessing of water. So let's look a little forward in the chart, and we'll get to here. These are the energies, the more recent energies in the chart. And I just wanted to I see these, I see this as a preparing here. For this line here, okay? A preparing, a filling with light before this happens. And I see these as clearings, okay? They're not as impactful as the other waves. And then you have a cross here. Did you see the cross? So, the cross, the present cross, representing faith. Let me go to today's chart. So what I want to show you about this here in the black charts, let me just see which one I want to look at here. Yeah, here it is. So this is what I wanted to show you specifically. The qualities, when that line happened, were back up at 22, and the raise in quality was for a solid 2 hours, okay? Peaking at 22, but over 18 to 22 for about 2 hours here, or less than 2 hours, but a substantial amount of time, okay? So what I want to tell you is that what this reminds me of is the bars that I called the propaganda bars, the mind control bars, that were occurring frequently in the charts in January, February, March, and even I think April. Maybe there's just a small number or a small impression of it in April or May, but it was really February and March, January, February, March, big time. And what confirmed it for me was the quality going back up to 22, because when we had the walls in the chart for months, last fall, that broke on January 29th, okay, the walls of Jericho, I called it in the chart. The quality of the red was up between 20 and 25. And I feel that it was fear generated by the global narrative that caused those walls to be like that caused the quality to be sustained so high in red, representing dense emotions, the forces of darkness, the shadow personality. So this is another offer to, hey, want to build that again? So as we're offering and seeing, as we are being revealed to, okay, as we are seeing what has happened, we're getting these revelations of truth, both personally on a personal level and in our broader society. There's always the potential or the opportunity to fall backward into drama, for people to, lose faith or hope or whatever. It's not that powerful. It only lasted 2 hours. The quality only spiked to 22. It didn't last at 22 for a long time. It was 2 hours, so it was meaningful that the quality spiked, but there aren't the hieroglyphic type stamping on this bar that there was in 2020. But you can see here the white line in the mid beta range, almost to high beta. So, there's a meaningful offer here, and it's coming at us through the mind, through the intellect. And I have seen people take up this offer just in the last couple days, and it's a very, very small number of people who seem to be agreeing this time. So the next thing I wanted to talk about in the chart was this, and I want to talk about it by showing you a picture. Okay, so this kind of looked like a, I wanted to call this a veil, okay? And I wanted to talk about the mechanism of this in the human energy field. Okay, so this is part 2 of the video. So there are layers in the human energy field. This is my view. So I've got here person, and here are the various layers. And these can represent time, levels of experience, age, various talents, things you like to do, etc. And the sunlight the sunlight represents the soul shining through the heart of this person. Well, this veil, if you will, it's like it can come over you and turn things upside down. It can come over you, and suddenly it's all that you see, And this can happen even if you have extensive, experience with energy and self-healing and self-growth work and everything, like myself. This is kind of where I'm at right now, after these shocking events that happened in my life. But essentially, what happens is the layer in the field, it's like that there's all this going on in your field, and you can't kind of feel it. It's just like the biggest thing you can feel is this veil of energy. And this can feel like shame, blame, guilt. It can feel like an experience that dominates your reality. It can feel like a lot of things like that. And so what I just want to offer now, since this video, and I want to make the video, not more than a half hour, is that one of the things to do is to take this little magnifying glass of your consciousness and see if you can find the initial event. If you resonate with what I'm saying, either from the past or in the current moment, because I think that what these energies have done is they have brought up things for us that if we clear them, we can significantly step forward into our lives, into the rest of this year. And it's almost like we have great fortune right now in this opportunity. And so if you can highlight, what was that event in my life? What was the trauma? So that it can be recognized and loved back into the truth of who you are, back into wholeness, so that it becomes hold on. Here we go. Because as we love it, okay, back into wholeness, what happens is it fades in its power to affect us, okay? So now here I can take it out, and I can look at it, and I can take it out and experience it, but it's no longer the whole of who I am. And so, looking closely at what is that? What was the initiating event, for example? That's a pretty good way to address this, okay? If you can bring yourself to do that. And the other thing to do is to say, is this mine or not mine? Because a lot of times what you are going to find is that this energy isn't even yours, okay? It's not even yours. And when you finally realize that it's not even yours, and it was someone else's field energy that they directed at you or put on you or whatever it happens to be, then you can, then you become much more able to reconnect with your own truth, the light of your own soul, the truth of who you are, and realize that this is not a part of you, okay? It's, in a way, it's really actually not who you are, and it's outside your field. Now, sometimes, of course, there are shadow elements that are personal experiences that we've had, but I'm talking about veils that have been put on us, right? Veils that have overcome us through various means and mechanisms. And it's similar to the idea of a narrative, of a global narrative or a propaganda that's been put on us that asks us to say, align with this idea because it is who you are, right? And we can look at this and say, shake it off. Is this mine or not mine? If it's not mine, you can command it to leave your field. All right? You can command it to leave your field. And the reason why it's so important for us to understand these concepts and why I talk about them relative to the Schumann resonance is this, okay? That this stuff is real. The energy is real. And in my view, these energy mechanisms show up on the Schumann resonance. And they show up so that we can learn from our own selves. Because truly, you have all the answers within you that you require. And your own relationship with divinity can be a working relationship whereby you provide this to yourself through that relationship, whereby God, the Most High, the Creator of the universe, the light of your soul, your spiritual guides of the highest light, become partners, where you work together in alignment with your highest good. And what I like to say is in alignment with divine will through me. And that puts us back into that returns us to the truth of who we are, that causes us to be able to learn to integrate the truth of who we are, to integrate our shadow and our light, to become more like the meek who shall inherit the earth.